When we think about our health, we usually picture it as a snapshot, right? How we feel today, right now. But what if it's not a snapshot at all? What if your health is actually a story, a long, complex story that's been written chapter by chapter since the very beginning of your life?
So if our health is a story, when does that first chapter actually get written? When we're kids? Teenagers? Or maybe when we're adults and start making our own choices? We all have ideas, but the real answer might actually surprise you.
Yep, you heard that right. Science is showing us that the first chapters of your health story are written long before you even take your first breath. There's a ton of research that shows that things happening during fetal development and even your parents' health before you were conceived can lay the groundwork for your well-being decades later. Wild, isn't it?
So how in the world do scientists make sense of all this? Well, they use this incredible framework called the life course approach. You can think of it like a blueprint for understanding how our past literally shapes our future health. And it's completely changing how we think about preventing chronic diseases.
The reason the life course approach is so powerful is that it sees health as this long, continuous journey. It connects the dots between things that happen to us early in life, both physical and social, and our risk for diseases as adults. It's all about tracing the paths that led us to where we are now. And within this big idea, there are 3 key models you gotta know.
First up is the critical period model. Okay, imagine you're building a house. If that concrete foundation is poured wrong in the very beginning, it's going to affect the stability of the entire house forever, right? It's kind of like that. Certain moments are so critical that what happens then can have a lasting, even irreversible impact. A really powerful real-world example of this was the Dutch hunger winter, where children of mothers who experienced malnutrition during a specific window of pregnancy had a higher risk for chronic health issues decades down the road.
Okay, next is the accumulation model. This one is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Just picture a scale. Throughout your life, different things, a poor diet, lack of exercise, stress, add little weights to one side of that scale. Each one might seem small on its own, but over the years, they all add up. They accumulate and can eventually tip the scales toward poor health.
And finally, we have the pathway model. I think this one is fascinating because it's all about the domino effect. An event early in your life doesn't just have one direct impact, it can set off a whole chain reaction. For example, a child's socioeconomic status can influence the quality of their education, which then affects their job opportunities, which then impacts their income. It's a cascade of events that shapes their health way, way later in life.
So, if so much of our health story is written for us so early on, are we just locked into our fate? Well, no, not at all. And that brings us to this incredibly powerful stage of life, adolescence. It's not just some awkward phase we all go through. Science actually sees it as a critical window of opportunity, a second chance to redirect our entire health story.
Just how crucial is this period? Well, get a load of this statistic. A staggering 80%, that's 8 out of 10, obese teenagers will go on to become obese adults. This shows us that what happens in our teen years isn't just a phase. The habits we form have incredible sticking power, making adolescence a really high-stakes turning point in our health story. So why are our teenage years so prone to risk-taking and forming these lifelong habits? Well, it really comes down to how our brains develop. You see, there's this kind of mismatch going on. The part of the brain that governs emotion, appetite, and seeking rewards, it develops pretty early. But the part responsible for impulse control and long-term planning, that develops much, much later. And it's that gap that explains why things that feel good now can easily win out over thinking about long-term consequences.
And that developmental gap in the brain has huge, real-world consequences. Think about it. So many of the behaviors that drive chronic diseases in adults, things like smoking, drinking, poor diet, not being active, they often get their start during these exact years. They're not just teenage phases. They are very often the foundational habits for an entire lifetime.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. Because investing in the health of teenagers isn't just about helping them become healthy adults. The life course approach shows us that there's this profound ripple effect. It's actually an investment in the health of the next generation, too.
This quote from our source material just says it all, doesn't it? When we empower adolescents, especially young women, with education and knowledge about their health, the benefits just multiply. Educated girls tend to have healthier families, and that creates this amazing positive cycle that passes well-being down from one generation to the next.
And right here, this is the ultimate takeaway. Focusing on adolescent health
isn't just about treating one person. It is one of the most powerful investments a society can make. It's a way to break these long, stubborn, intergenerational cycles of poverty and poor health. It's a strategy that pays dividends for generations to come.
Which brings us all the way back to where we started, your health story. Understanding this life course idea shows us that our story is deeply connected to the people who came before us, and it's going to influence those who come after us. So it leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. What chapter of your family's health story will you write next?